Finally, Sami, you and I are from countries which are pretty much in a mess. You're from Tunisia, and Tunisia has been run by a deranged dictator. I'm sorry to say that. And I'm from India, and Muslims are being persecuted in India, and actually around the world. You know, we're bound by our ummatic unity. We see ourselves as being beyond our forged nation states. We see ourselves bound by this aqidah, and we are one as an ummah. And we feel for Palestinians not because we believe in some anti-imperialist left-wing struggle, but we believe that these people are our people, and Palestine is our land, and Al-Quds is blessed because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed Al-Quds, and you demonstrated that in the last discussion we had. But there is a sense of hopelessness today. You know, we are in a situation where that ummatic unity is in our minds, but it's not demonstrated anywhere in our leaderships. It's not demonstrated. You know, maybe there are a few green shoots, as you mentioned, Imran Khan, possibly, you know, there are some green shoots. Mahathir Mohamad gave a very good comment, actually, on, you know, as you may have read on the Gaza conflict, which, you know, should be praised. But these are small green shoots. The political tendency is moving away from what you and I believe in and what we believe most Muslims believe in. Is there hope in this very bleak time?
I think that sometimes I understand where Muslims come from when they present the bleak or they argue that the situation looks bleak. I know in our first podcast we delved into this, but I also want to present another angle that perhaps I didn't present it in that first podcast that we did, the Raving in Riyadh one, which is that let's look at the individual countries. If you look at Turkey, for example, Ataturk comes in and dissolves the Ottoman Empire. Ataturk struggles to win Turkish support. The Anatolians distrust him. So he calls on Sheikh Ahmed al-Sanusi of Libya, invites him to Turkey to do a tour of Anatolia, and he walks with Sheikh Ahmed al-Sanusi, and Sheikh Ahmed al-Sanusi calls him a ghazi fi sabilillah, and that's what gets the Turks to follow him. Ataturk is aware of that, so after he liberates Turkey, because Ataturk did fight, we shouldn't deny that, after Turkey is liberated, he crushes those elements, because he's aware that they weren't willing to follow him. They followed him only because the ummatic connection with Ahmed al-Sanusi, his endorsement, a non-Turk's endorsement, encouraged the Anatolians, the Turks, to follow Ataturk. So he crushes the Muslim movement, he changes the adhan to Turkish, he bans the printing of the Quran, or his followers ban the printing of the Quran, and he changes the Turkish language from Arabic alphabet to English or the like. He suppresses the scholars, and then he goes to the Kurds and he utterly smashes them. The Kurds who revolt on the basis of Islam, not of independence. I know Turks won't like to hear it, but I always argue that, you know, when you tell a population they can't speak their language and can't express their culture, 40, 50 years later, a separatist movement is going to eventually emerge. It's not rocket science. Umar bin Abdul Aziz once was asked, they said to him, I have an unruly group of people. Send me more troops to crush them. And Umar bin Abdul Aziz replied, you know, حصنها بالعدل. Fortify your area with justice. You don't need my troops. You need justice here. That might upset some Turks, but that's not the point. But the point is that, so Ataturk crushes all these Islamic sentiments or the like. But even within crushing that, the mosques and the ulama and the Muslims operating in those harsh environments deliver Adnan Menderes to power. Adnan Menderes changes the Quran from Turkish back to Arabic. Military gets angry and they launch a coup, but they can't change the adhan back. Muslims are repressed 80s, another coup. And then it gets to 90s. The Muslims, through their work, through their taw'iyah, through their education and the like, they deliver Erbakan to the premiership. Najmuddin Erbakan. The fruit of his... People always think, oh, these are just politics. No, these are movements. Erbakan becomes prime minister. He's accused of Islamizing the state. He's toppled. But 5 years or 6 years later, Erdogan comes to power and transforms the face of Turkey. Whatever people call, and we all have our issues with Erdogan, but Turkey has been transformed. In the Algerian liberation, in the 1920s, a movement emerged in Algeria that said that we shouldn't fight the colonizers anymore. We should be part of France, and I don't recognize the Algerian state. It's Farhat Abbas in particular, he led the movement. I don't know of anything called Algeria, and I am arguing for French rights within France. France should stay, but should give us equal rights. The reason that movement emerged is because there was a group of Algerians in Algeria who believed that the French had been there for so long, for 100 years, that there is no way they're ever going to leave Algeria. So we should just accept that this is the situation. There was a sheikh called Abdul Hamid bin Badis who set up what's called the Jamiyyat Ulama al-Muslimin, who set up the Council of Islamic Scholars, which was not a political movement. What it did was that it set up in every place like a zawiyah, like not a Sufi order. People shouldn't confuse zawiyah with the zawiyahs in the Sufi order. But set up these schools where people would be educated in Islamic history and the Quran, reminding the Algerian people who felt the despair about Allah, the victories that He gives, the people who came before us, reteaching that history to a people who had lost despair and hopelessness. And the French records argue that Abdul Hamid bin Badis, even though he never made a political statement except that Algeria is Muslim and belongs to Ummah Muhammad, Abdul Hamid bin Badis revived or gave renewed hope to this identity that led to liberation. 40 years later, the French were kicked out. I think that when you look at the individual countries, Pakistan, for example, Pakistan was part of India. India was part under the British rule. The Hindus decided to persecute the Muslims and they didn't know what to do. Eventually, the Muslims managed to separate and establish the independent state of Pakistan. Regardless what you think of Muhammad Ali Jinnah later on, I know Pakistanis revere him or the like, but I think Muhammad Asad in his book argues that he was concerned that when the Saudis sent him to help write the constitution, he felt that Pakistanis were not too keen on Islamic rule or the policymakers at the time, even if the people were. But regardless, Pakistan, you look at its development and the upheaval or the like. We're talking today about the potential normalization. And I said to you that the Pakistanis are unlikely to accept. There's a fear that the Pakistan, because they love Islam, they love the Saudis. That hasn't been ruined. And I think that Imran Khan is not something that happened in a vacuum. The Imran Khan phenomenon came about because the Pakistanis backed him because they believed, rightly or wrongly is irrelevant, the Pakistanis believed that somebody who was a Muslim ambassador on the global stage is worth fighting for. When you speak to Pakistanis, why do you support Imran Khan? They don't mention economy. They don't mention politics. They mention he stood up for Muslim rights against the superpowers. Whether he did it or not effectively is irrelevant. That's what resonated for Pakistanis to take to the streets and provide the greatest threat to the political establishment since Pakistan's inception. The point here being is that people always talk about bleak political movements, but I think what they're more upset about, they're more upset that Allah has chosen a course that's not the course that they wanted. That Allah has chosen a course for the development of the Muslim political movement that they don't want. And that's why I think sometimes that when you remember that Allah is in control and Allah rewards and punishes as He wills, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent Nuh to his people and for over 900 years He's calling to them and He still destroyed Nuh's people. This is why when the Prophet ﷺ said, Shayyibatni Huda, that the surah of Surah Hud has Shayyibatni, given me white hairs. Because in Surah Hud, you see all the examples where Allah reminds you that success comes from Him. I sent Salih to Thamud, and Thamud didn't believe, I destroyed them. I sent Hud to Ad, and Allah destroyed them. They didn't listen to Hud. I sent Shu'aib to Midian. Midian didn't listen. I destroyed them one by one because Muhammad ﷺ was realizing that Allah was saying that I'm ready to destroy these people when I said the message. The point here being is that I think that when you look at the way the Israelis are approaching the Palestine issue, the Israelis were convinced Palestine was dying. They were convinced, or they were convinced that they were on the cusp of finally eradicating the Palestinians. Look at the mood last week and compare it to the mood today with regards to the Palestinian cause. It's roaring, Muhammad. It's roaring even though Israel is pummeling Gaza. It's roaring even though there is a death toll in Gaza, because everybody is saying that the cause is alive and it's been proven to us here. Because the reality is that success doesn't come on your terms. The striving is on your terms, whether you choose to strive or not. But the success comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He gave victory to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but not necessarily to the people of Noor. And I think sometimes we Muslims need to appreciate that and remind ourselves what is our ultimate goal here, which is Jannah. We are travelers in this dunya. We go past this dunya to give da'wah, to call people to what is right. And some people pay a heavier price than others. Some people are prevented from going to capitals, prevented from going to Mecca, Medina, prevented from going to Cairo or the like, because they are calling out for that which is good. Allah gives people different degrees of power. Somebody, his only power is to retweet. And retweeting fixes the algorithm so that the algorithm promotes the tweet so more people see it. That's power. Some people are given positions of media platforms where we can convey our messages, where you can bring Sami to talk or bring Paul Williams or these other. Some people are blessed with power over an army. Some people are blessed with foreign ministry. Some people are blessed with... Everyone has their own individual power. And that's why I think that when you look at the Muslim Ummah, how 90 or 100 years after the Khilafah was toppled, after the Ottoman Empire fell, when you look at how they didn't give up, The Turks delivered. That's why Erdogan, some people say sometimes, Sami, you're soft on Erdogan. It's not that I'm soft on Erdogan. It's that I appreciate the efforts of the Muslim community who believed in Allah, who feel the same way we do, who feel they belong to an ummah. I appreciate the sacrifices they gave when they went to prison, when they were tortured, when they were executed, when they strived to teach the Quran, when they kept the Quran in its language to teach the people, when they gave the adhan in Arabic, when they would hide in their circles in order to teach Islam. I appreciate that. I appreciate that Erdogan is the latest in this chapter to break the chains of Ataturk. I appreciate that. I'm not the one to come today to destroy it. I appreciate that in Pakistan, for all of the efforts of the establishment to control the Pakistani people and make them ignore Muslim causes, I appreciate that despite Pakistan being in an economic crisis, they come out in force for Palestine because they resonate with Al-Quds and they resonate with the Palestinians. I appreciate that the Bengalis who have been persecuted, their ulama in prison, tortured, they die in prison because they love Allah and they love the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I appreciate that they, in what we call bleak, they gave their lives and they gave their struggles for it. That despite Khalida Zia and Sheikh Hasina and these leaders in power, the Bengalis come out in force to protect the honor of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in huge numbers when Macron is trying to defend it, to say anything but our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And that's why I think sometimes, and I said it in the first podcast, I think sometimes when Allah says وَإِن تُعُدُّوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ لَا تُحْصُوهَا, that when you count the blessings of Allah, you can't finish counting them. I think those who say are bleak, they haven't started counting the blessings of Allah. They have tried. When Lindsey Graham, the US senator, says this is a religious war, it's a religious war against Islam because we believe that we are somehow being defeated. They believe that despite all the efforts, colonization, the state-of-the-art weaponry, we still can't quash this ideology. Sami is born in London and he loves Allah and His Prophet. Muhammad Jalal lives in London, he loves Allah and His Prophet. Muslims are growing in and they sympathize with Suella Braverman wants to ban the waving of the Palestinian flag. Because she's like, how can these people still resonate with that? And the reason they resonate, and I tell Muslims to be careful here. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Imran, رَبَّنَا لَا تُزِغْ قُلُوبَنَا بَعْدَ إِذْ هَدَيْتَنَا وَهَبْ لَنَا مِن لَدُنْكَ رَحْمَةً إِنَّكَ أَنْتَ الْوَهَّابُ. Allahumma, do not turn our hearts away from this deen after you have guided us. وَهَبْ لَنَا مِن لَدُنْكَ رَحْمَةً, and bestow upon us your mercy, implying that you could be turned away from this religion. Implying that the ingratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could lead you out of this religion. Implying that your lack of appreciation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could lead you out of this religion. When the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Ya muqallib al-qulub, thabbit qalbi ala dinik, and the Prophet knew, he was the wahyun yuha, he'd seen the seven heavens, he'd gone to Al-Aqsa, and he said, Allah, don't turn my heart away from this deen. Implying, Ya Allah, I know that it's a blessing and a mercy from you that I follow this deen. I know that it's not a right, it's a privilege that you guided my heart and you put it here. I think that the reaction of the Muslim should be, Subhanallah, I recognize your authority. I read Surah Hud and I know that at any moment you can destroy any population as you will. Allah, I know that you can deliver success to anybody that you will. And this is why sometimes I always argue from my own political analysis, being involved in politics, being involved in advising policymakers. I've been in this industry now for over a decade. And I've seen that policymakers, they don't know it all. They don't. They are just as confused often as you are. They are just as clueless as you are sometimes. And you realize there are so many opportunities to turn the levers, to turn the ledgers. A public opinion is making bin Salman backtrack on his rhetoric regarding normalization. Public opinion made Erdogan go back to lambasting Israel after he did a humiliating stance where he was like, we call for restraint. We're making Erdogan back down because of public opinion, because Allah has given every human being the ability to make a difference. Those who say it's bleak are people who don't know how to use that power. And that's why I think sometimes it's less about where are these people and where are these political movements, and more about if it's not there, start it. If it's there, amplify it. What can you do within the powers that Allah has given you? That's why sometimes you talk about thinking Muslim. Allah has blessed you, Muhammad. Hundreds of thousands of people are watching your videos. But why are they watching your videos? They're watching because they believe that in these videos, they are receiving information and guidance on how they can deploy their power. Allah has given you that power to do so. At the moment, that's your place within this ecosystem that we have in order to try to promote these Islamic movements. And that's why I think that sometimes, and I won't go on too long about it, Muslims should be aware of the arrogance of the heart. The arrogance that says that if I didn't do it, it's not good. If I didn't do it, it's not worth it. I look at, for example, in Pakistan, and may the brothers forgive me because I know a lot of them. When I look at Jamiat Islami, for example, and their silence on Imran Khan, I think a lot of that silence, and I know they will be very angry with me on this, I think a lot of their silence is that we spent decades being the Muslim representatives. How dare an upstart like Imran Khan come and suddenly take the leadership away from us? I think that the reality is that we should be wary of this arrogance of the heart which suggests that I have to be on the podium. And that's why I think that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if you think about it, the greatest thing you can give to Allah is the sacrifice, not the goal. The prophets didn't manage to convince all of their people. مَا آمَنُوا إِلَّا قَلِيلًا. Only a few managed to convince. Allah didn't reward them for the number of people they managed to win over to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah rewarded them because they kept going even when it looked bleak. We have du'as in the Quran where the prophets are saying, Ya Allah, I've had enough for them. I had enough for them. فَقُلْتُ لَهُمْ اسْتَغْفِرُوا رَبَّكُمْ إِنَّهُ كَانَ غَفَّارًا يُرْسِلِ السَّمَاءَ عَلَيْكُم مِّدْرَارًا. Nuh in Surah Nuh is describing how much he's tried to convince them. And in the end he says, forget it, Ya Rabb, they are useless. The prophets but Allah is rewarding them for their striving and their effort. And that's why I think that sometimes, to answer your question, I know that it looks bleak, but I promise you that those who stand against the Muslims do not believe we're in a bleak position. We might think that we are becoming a defeated people, but I promise you in Washington, they don't think Muslims are becoming a defeated people. In Washington, they're debating why is it that after 90 years of top-down secularism, after 90 years of giving them raves, of spreading alcohol, of bringing them girls in bikinis, of giving them beaches and giving them financing and IMF loans and the like, why is it after 90 years they still vote for Islamic-leaning parties? They consider that a failure. Why is it that Erdogan wins election after election, not because of the economy, but because people are terrified that the other side is anti-Islamic? Let's be blunt here. Erdogan won the last election not because of the economy. Erdogan won the last election because Muslims were terrified the other party was anti-Islamic. This is in Turkey, which is considered the king of secularism. And this is why I think that sometimes for Muslims, when Muslims talk about the bleak future, the reality is that, look, you are the only one who sees it bleak. You are the only one who thinks we are being defeated. Everybody else thinks we're in the ascendancy. Everybody else thinks we're not being extinguished. Everybody else is trying, the French are saying, how on earth, why? We are the civilizing mission. Why do they still hold on to these principles? Why is it that when we went into countries in Africa, they didn't adopt our religion or our values, but when Islam entered, it never left. Islam entered Algeria in the 700s. It never left. When the Algerians celebrated liberation, they didn't say, we are celebrating the Algerian state. They yelled, Ya Muhammad Mabrook Alik, Al Jazair Raj'at Lik. Ya Muhammad, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, congratulations, Algeria has been returned to you. That's how the ideology penetrated the heart and stayed there. And that's why Ibn Khaldun says, a civilization is not destroyed when it is physically destroyed. It's destroyed when it's mentally destroyed. It's destroyed when its psychology is destroyed. And that's what colonizers are so angry about. That why is it still stays in these hearts? Why is it more Europeans are becoming Muslims? Why is it more Americans are becoming Muslims? Why is it that when these scholars go to debate Christians in this Spencer show, I don't know his full name or the like, why is it that that the Christian identifies more with Muslims nowadays? It's because the message is resoundingly clear, because it's a message that didn't come from you who thinks it's bleak, not you specifically, but you who thinks it's bleak. It came from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, master of the seven heavens and the earth, who decides what he wishes, does what he wants, when he wants. And the greatest honor is in not telling Allah, this is the course you should do. The honor is, Ya Allah, keep me on this deen and let me be the vehicle through which you express your will. This is the greatest honor. The way I see it is, the Muslims, and I promise to finish on this point. The way I see it is this: the Muslim who says it's bleak, look at what you can do. If you have the ability to share or retweet somebody in a higher position of power, do it. If you can go pray in the mosque, do it. People will notice Muslims going in and out, and they start asking the question, who are these Muslims going out? If you can go and organize iftars, go and organize iftars. Give da'wah, give da'wah. وَمَنْ أَحْسَنُ قَوْلًا مِمَّنْ دَعَا إِلَى اللَّهِ. There is no better speech than one who calls to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We always sometimes like to lash out at people, but we forget. And this is why I brought this point about رَبَّنَا لَا تُزِغْ قُلُوبَنَا. If you appreciate that Allah blessed you with guidance and that He can take this guidance away, you will take care of your guidance much more. You will start looking at your guidance and saying, how can I show my appreciation for this guidance? And the way you show the appreciation is to try to guide other people, to say, Allah, I love your message, so I'm going to say it. So to answer your question briefly, and I promise I'm going to finish on this point. To answer your question briefly, when I look at Turkey, when I look at Pakistan, when I look at the proliferation of mosques in the UK, when I look at the defiance of the Muslims in France, that they are still growing despite the crackdown on France, when I see Malaysia and how it preserves its Muslim identity, when I see that China is concerned about the growth of Islam in China, when I see that the African nations are increasingly turning to Islam because they see it as a liberating religion, when I see that Mali resonates more with Turkey because of the Muslim connection than it does with France, with which it speaks the same language, when I see that Senegal, Turkey within the space of 5 years has almost pushed France out as a result of the Muslim connection, not because Turkey is superior to France, when I see all of this, I would be a fool and an ingrate to turn around and say, Ya Allah, your religion is looking bleak.
Sami Hamdi, may Allah protect you and may Allah reward you and accept from you and I and from all of us. Jazakallah khair.
Allah jazik, barakallahu feek, jazakumullah.
Assalamu alaikum.
Thanks.
Please remember to subscribe to our social media and YouTube channels and head over to our website thinkinmuslim.com to sign up to my weekly newsletter. Jazakallah khair.